What's up, everybody, and welcome to JFK Book Reviews, a division of the Lone Gunman podcast. I am Rob Clark. He is Joe Borelli. And today we're going to be reviewing the book 11/22/63 by none other than Stephen King. And look at this.
Ooh, that's a good smack there.
She may be the thickest one yet.
I think so.
And she's got a good thump to her when you tap that ass. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's a big girl. Big Bad Bob loves his big girls. So, Joe, tell us a little bit more about this book here that we're going to be reviewing today.
Sure. So it was released in 2011, obviously by Stephen King, and the first by Schreiber Publishing, a division of Simon and Schuster Incorporated from New York. Yes, and the first words are, "This book is a work of fiction," and any reference to historical events, real people, or real locales are used fictitiously. Other names, characters, places, and incidents are products of the author's imagination. And it was Stephen King's 60th book. And when I saw that, I was like, damn, he should have wrote two more. Made it number 63. But it was announced on his website in March of 2011. There was some short excerpts released in June 2011. And October, Entertainment Weekly, New York Times, and Rob, this book received a lot of rewards. It became a #1 bestseller. It stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for 16 weeks. It won the 2011 Los Angeles Times Book Prize for Best Mystery Thriller and 2012 International Thriller Writers Award for Best Novel, and was nominated for the 2012 British Fantasy Award for Best Novel and the 2012 Locus Award for Best Science Fiction Novel. And the novel was also selected by the New York Times as one of its 10 best books of 2011. So, wow. And also, as you know, was adapted into a Hulu miniseries, in 2016, starring James Franco's, among others. And I will say the guy who plays Lee does kind of resemble him. Maybe he was time traveling. You never know. You can get this from thrift books for as low as, let's see, they're all ranging about $20 for the lower copies. Target, Walmart, and going up to $30. And I saw one on Etsy for $300. I was like, oh. And
Better be signed in Stephen King's blood.
Yeah, right. Or written to JFK Jr. Signed by the guy in Dealey Plaza. It consists of 6 parts. The original softcover, 10,090 pages, and the hardcover / online PDF version, 859 pages. It obviously does not have an index or endnote section, but does have about a 15-page afterwards section, which I'll address in my closing thoughts. And Rob, this book definitely has a fictitious lone nut time traveling lean.
It does.
Was that good?
Yes. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying, Joe, that I grew up a huge Stephen King fan. Not just reading his books, but, I mean, kids my age grew up on Cujo.
Right.
It.
No iPads, no iPhones.
Stand By Me.
Right.
Salem's Lot, The Silver Bullet. I mean, these are iconic Stephen King novella adaptions into cinema that opened up, a whole new audience to his books. Christine, forgot about that one. And like I said, I grew up a Stephen King fan. I read a lot of his books. And as you get older, you tend, you have to start working, you have a family, you have less time to read books, right? So,
Theoretically.
I'm very picky about what books I read nowadays because I don't have time to just sit there and read every decent books that comes out, right?
Right.
It's going to really woo me.
I 100% agree. Yes.
But back in 2011, of course, being interested in this subject, this book wooed me, right? Now, I did have the original hardcover, and I don't know what happened to it. So, in one of my used bookstore trips, I picked this up. As you can see, this was published well after the Hulu adaptation came
Yeah.
out. It's on the cover,
Hmm.
but I did have the original hardcover, and I had it in one of my cars the last time I saw it, and I don't know what happened to it. I lost it over the years, so I decided to pick up the paperback, uh, just so I'd have it because
Fell out of the trunk.
it might have. Who the hell knows? The kid might have spilled a milkshake on it or something, or puked on it. Who knows? So, Stephen King is the master of horror,
Yes.
right? He is the master of horror writing. And I think, how sometimes when you have geniuses that are contemporary to the time, that their true masterpieces aren't recognized until long after they're gone.
Yes.
Fortunately, though, we have a master of his genre alive right now and still working, which is amazing.
Hmm.
To be alive at the time where Picasso was alive, or Andy Warhol, or Jackson Pollock, or
Yeah.
John Steinbeck. Just great novelists, great artists, great musicians. They generally don't get their flowers until long after they're gone, but Stephen King gets his.
He does.
And I believe this was his first foray into historical fiction, meaning, while sometimes his books are set in the past, he's a big fan of writing things like in the time that he grew up, like in the
Right.
50s and 60s. I mean, you see when Christine was set, you see when uh, Stand By Me was set.
Yeah.
A lot of his stories revolve around settings back in the early 50s and 60s because this is the time he grew up, and this is a time that he loved.
Yeah, and Rob, I watched a YouTube video, a recap of him talking about this book, saying it brought him back to the 50s and 60s and, describing that era and how it smelled and how the dresses, how people dressed. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and while this is by no means a horror novel, by no means, it is very much a complex, I would call it a science fiction novel more than anything because of the time travel aspect
Right.
and the paradoxes that, of course, that introduces into the story. And this is a very multi-layered story.
Right.
And me and Joe were talking before the show, it kind of, it's hard to follow unless you are really dialed in
Yes.
because you're jumping back and forth between time periods, multiple time periods, multiple names, multiple places, things that have happened before, things like this. It's a lot to keep straight, um, and really understand, and take it in. I mean, imagine reading this book, Joe, if you knew nothing about the Kennedy assassination. The fact that we know some stuff about the Kennedy assassination, is pretty cool. But somebody that didn't know shit about it, this would just be a time travel book for them. But you have the story In the backdrop of this story, you have a main character who is struggling in his real life, you know, seemingly without a purpose. I believe in the book, Jake is a GED teacher. Okay.
Yeah. High
Which,
school teacher, yeah,
yeah,
or
he's a high
something.
school teacher and he teaches GED classes on the side at the local community college or whatever. And, he's not really happy with his life or how his life is going. So you have him struggling with that. Then you have him being introduced to a whole new world, an unbelievable world, one that he can go back in time and visit the past and influence things changing in the future. Now, the premise of this book, right? So he meets this guy named Al who owns this burger joint. That out the back door of the burger joint, if you go down a couple steps, all of a sudden it dumps you at 11:58 a.m. on September 9th, 1958. Blah, blah, in the middle of this small little town, this quaint little town. And of course, he goes through and describes, the people, the cars, the music, the atmosphere, the food, the drinks, getting a root beer float just tastes amazing, and seeing all these cool cars, these cool old cars, and hearing the cool old music and just how people were in the 50s, just very nice. And of course, he does throw some weird character in there, right? This drunk bum, with the yellow card.
Oh, Bill Turcotte
I can't
or
remember his name.
George McKay, it says.
He's got a couple names.
Yeah, the
But
bartender who joins Jake's mission.
no,
Oh,
it's a guy he's got to pay money to every time he goes back. There's always like this drunk asshole, that they can see him and seems to remember him at times through his drunken stupor. But so the premise of it is every time he goes back, like, he can go back for as long as he wants,
mm-hmm.
right? He can go back for 2 years, but in our reality, only 2 minutes have passed. So, he can go back for 10 minutes and 2 minutes have passed here. Or he can stay for 10 years and 2 minutes have passed here in our world.
I would have loved to have that ability, man. Right?
Right?
Loved it.
Every time he goes back, everything resets. So it's not like you can go back and make some progress and then come back to reality for a little break and then go back. No, you got to start from scratch every time you go back. Now, I'm going to read a little piece of Al, the burger joint owner, telling him about how things are. And he says, when it comes to the river of history, the watershed moments most susceptible to change are assassinations, the ones that succeeded and the ones that failed. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria gets shot by a mentally unstable pipsqueak named Gavrilo Princip. And there's your kickoff to World War I. On the other hand, after Klaus von Stauffenberg failed to kill Hitler in 1944, the war continued and millions more died. Al said, there's nothing we can do about that. Archduke Ferdinand and Adolf Hitler, they're out of our reach because they can only go back to 1958, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Jake is saying, I thought of accusing him of making pronounal assumptions and kept my mouth shut. I felt like a man reading a very grim book. A Thomas Hardy novel, say. You know how it's going to end, but instead of spoiling things, that somehow increases your fascination. It's like watching a kid run his electric train faster and faster and waiting for it to derail on one of the curves.
Mm-hmm.
As for 9/11, if you want to fix that one, you'll have to wait around in the other world for 43 years. So if you want to change, if you want to make 9/11 not happen ever, you could go back to 1958, but you would have to stay alive long enough in that world for 43 years until 9/11 happens in 2001, or
Yeah.
supposed to happen.
Yeah. I get it. I'm following.
He says you'd be pushing 80 if you made it at all. And he says now the Lone Star flag the gnome had been holding outside of Al's house made sense. It was a souvenir of his last jaunt into the past. You couldn't even make it to 63 now, could you? Because Al is sick. Al is going to die. Al has cancer. And he's tried a couple times to go back and change the outcome of the JFK assassination. But every time he's tried, he's failed. It still happens. And now in the real world, he's dying. So this is why he's telling Jake about this. And he wants Jake to continue to try to change history. And he says, to this, he didn't reply. He just watched me. His eyes, which had the look of roomy and vague when he let me into the diner that afternoon, now looked bright and almost young. Because that's what you're talking about, right? Dallas in 1963? Al says, that's right. I had to opt out, but you're not sick, buddy. You're healthy and in the prime of your life. You can go back and you can stop it. He leaned forward, his eyes not just bright, but they were blazing. You can change history, Jake. Do you understand that? John Kennedy can live. So, this is how the main character, Jake, gets sold on this mission, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not really missing out anything here. Every time he leaves and comes back, it's been 2 minutes, right? So he's not really fucking his life up here.
Right.
Now, of course, there has to be a story within the story within a story within a story with Stephen King.
Yeah.
Okay. There's, like I said, there's multiple layers to all this. So, of course, he goes back and he meets Sadie, this beautiful blonde, and falls in love with her. But every time he has to come back, like something will happen where he goes back and he tries, because he has, what is it, basically almost a little over 4 years between September 1958 and November of 63
Yeah.
to alter the course of history. Now, of course, Lee Harvey Oswald does not even return to the United States until 1962.
Yep. June.
So while there, he has time to formulate a plan to figure out how he can derail this. But
Right. About 3 years ish.
yeah, it seems like something always happens, and there's a theme of time always fighting back in this movie or this book. Like time doesn't want to, or time doesn't want to change. Like it will fight you back, and it will
Mm-hmm.
try to derail your efforts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he meets this chick and he falls in love with her. But every time he goes back, everything resets. So he has to meet her again. He has to get her to fall in love with him again. But of course, that gets easier every time because every time he goes back, the more he knows about her. He knows
Right.
her favorite flowers, her favorite fragrances, her favorite foods, her favorite.
Well, what's that Adam Sandler movie? Was it 50 First Dates?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
Something like that. So you have these multiple tracks going in this book, along with a social commentary, and of course the thought process of what life would be like in the world, not just the United States, but in the world had John Kennedy lived. Had he lived, would his brother have been killed? Would Martin Luther King have been killed?
That's a really good question and something I honestly contemplate a lot. And I know you do too.
Yeah, I mean, would the Cold War have lasted into the 90s? How would life be different, not just in our daily lives, but for the good of the world. You know, we always have this fan or fairy tale image of Camelot and how great John Kennedy was as a leader and how he could have changed the world and it would be a much better place than it is now. But is that reality? Would that have happened? Would he have become a beloved president, ran for a second term?
Right.
Would then his brother have ran for president and had 2 terms? I
Yeah.
mean, it's crazy to think about.
Teddy too wanted to run until the
Yeah,
Chappaquiddick, right?
yeah. I mean, it's crazy how much if
The
a
di-
country
the
had the
dynasty could
leadership.
have the dynasty could have lasted kind of.
Yeah, if our country had the right leadership and been on the right trajectory to lead the world instead of dividing it and the bullshit we have now with, religion and intelligence services and everything trying to divide us,
I'll
um,
go.
could they have united us? You know, and that theme is explored in the book, and it doesn't always turn out right. I don't want to give too much of the plot of the book away, but again, if you haven't read it by now, you should. Um, so believe me, these themes are examined and taken into consideration and explored thoroughly. As for time travel aspects, there's of course different kinds of time travel. Stephen King, I believe he said he started writing this book in 1972. He got 14 pages into it and quit because it was just too daunting of a task to wrap his mind around at the time of how the world could possibly have changed, and without the benefit of hindsight being 2020, writing the book when he did in the early 2000s, it gave him a better perspective. And of course, he was working at the time in the early 70s, so he didn't have a lot of time to research a lot of the stuff that he would have needed to get the book right back then. So I'm glad he waited a little bit to do it.
Mhm.
And I don't know, Joe. I just and of course how it ends. I mean, Stephen King, I believe the way he does things is I don't know that he always knows how his book is going to end. His I think he mentions somewhere in the afterword that his son actually helped him change the end of the novel, um, due to time travel paradoxes or something.
Mhm. Kind of like our weekly episodes.
Yeah, and I think he writes like 2, 3, or 4 novels at the same time,
Right.
and when he gets stuck or when he's in a bad place on one of them, he'll move over and start writing another one.
Right.
And then when he gets stuck on that one, he'll stop until he has a good idea and then go back to something else. So I think that's how he writes.
Right.
And a book as complex as this, I don't think you would need like a gigantic whiteboard to chart this thing out, the flow chart for this book. So to me, it was pretty impressive to see how he interwove everything, explored a lot of options, and then tied everything together at the end, and gives us this classic love story ending. But with that being said, Joe, let's hear your thoughts about it and your rating, sir.
All right. So I say this every week, but this is going to be a hard one to rate. I'm just going to read something from the afterward section. He goes, Ruby was heartsick at the thought of Jackie having to return to Dallas for Oswald's trial. The widow would become a national spectacle, he said. Her grief would be used to sell tabloids. Of course, the irony there is how many thousand books have been written about the JFK assassination since? Uh, unless, of course, Lee Harvey Oswald came down with a bad case of the deads. The assassin died at Parkland, skipping a little, Parkland shortly after without making a statement, thanks to a stripper who needed $25 and a half-assed showboat, of course, referring to Ruby. So he's obviously landed on the low nut side. He did, go to all the locations, um, and go to Dallas for his research and stuff like that. And I think I was watching one of his interviews on this book that he hopes that it would bring some people into the JFK assassination milieu, right? So if that's the case, and listen, it's fiction, which of course factors into the rating, and it explores all the themes that you just eloquently talked about: themes of fate, consequences of altering history. Shit, I'd love to have a time machine behind me and go back and be chilling behind the picket fence. You know what I mean? And love, and it's there's a lot of depth and layers to it, like you said, and I don't really know where to land on it, man. I think I'm just listen. It really depends on your preference. If this is your type of thing, um, it's not a JFK research book, obviously. So if you're like most of our listeners and our document nerds, probably isn't the book for you. But is it entertaining? Of course. If you prefer the Hulu version with James Franco, that could be preferable to some people with their preferences. So I don't know where to land. I'm going to land right in the middle. 5 thumbs up.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Well, let's see here. I mean, it's a Stephen King book, folks. It can be heavy at times. It can be complicated at times. And I think he balances everything involved in this, including the love story, including time travel, and including real historical events that happened, real historical people, into his interpretation of if we could go back and save JFK, what would happen? And I think this book does a great job of illustrating what we call the butterfly effect or chaos theory. How one simple, small thing could change everything, and not always for the better. Again, this is not JFK research book reviews. This is JFK book reviews. It's just a book about JFK, and it happens to be the subject matter of this book. So it combines for me two of my favorite genres, which is Stephen King and 11/22/63. Now I get there is some facts wrong in this book. Of course, there's going to be blatant research mistakes. Stephen King is not a JFK researcher by any stretch of the imagination. He doesn't have the time. Okay, and I get it.
Yeah, I do too.
So he's only as good as who he's reading and where he's getting his information from. People helping him research things. And I get it. These things are not going to always be caught in the editorial process, and there are some factual inaccuracies in here. But again, it's a work of fiction, so you just have to take that for what it is. Mm-hmm. It's not the first novel to explore time travel when it comes to the JFK assassination. It's not the first movie to do so either. These are just fantasy questions in one's mind. If we can go back in time, if we could save JFK from being killed that day, but he only got killed 2 weeks after that. That would be like the ultimate bummer. You know what I mean? Like you saved him that day, but they get him 2 weeks from now. Now you got to go back to 1958 and start all over again.
Yeah.
Save him twice. You know, it's fun in my brain is how I can describe this book. It's fun in my brain. I enjoyed it. To me, with everything wrapped into it, and for it being what it is, Joe, a fictional take on a time travel, historical perspective. To me, it is a thick masterpiece in doing so. So, I'm going to give this book 10 guns up.
Our first 10. Wow. And I respect that. It's just that the genre isn't for me personally, which is of course why we differ on our book reviews and leave it to the listener to, decide if you want to read it or not. But I respect it, sir. I do.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not into science fiction shit, if you're not into Stephen King really, and reading like you can watch a Stephen King movie, but you need to read the dude.
Right.
Read it because it's way different than the movies. And if you're not into the way he writes and you're not into science fiction or time travel or paradoxes or theories and all this other crazy shit, like this is like the perfect storm for me to read this book because it encompasses everything that I dig. Stephen King is writing a science fiction time travel novel about JFK. Fucking take my money. Take my fucking money. You got it. You got it not once, twice. And I bought the series on Hulu on Blu-ray. You got it 3 times. And now I'm giving you more because I'm hyping this book here on YouTube and telling you to get it. Read it. And if you're into the same kind of shit, you won't be disappointed. If you're like Joe, maybe you will be. I don't know.
Yeah.
But again, this is what makes us different people. We have different opinions. And that's it for this one. And if you like this book review, folks, make sure to tune in here on YouTube every Friday night at 7 p.m. where we live stream a show all about our investigation into the murder of John F. Kennedy. And we also do a live show on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. for our channel members only, exclusively just for them.
Yes, we do.
So in the meantime, check out an older book review. Check out our podcast playlist over here. And we'll see you next time here on JFK Book Reviews. Until then, peace.
Thank you, everyone.